Welcome back to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm Joey Dwyer here with a rapid reaction to the selection show for the sixth straight season. Vanderbilt will not sniff the NCAA tournament for the sixth straight year. Vanderbilt's let down by a quiet finish to Selection Sunday. Just a really disappointing end to a year that had some special moments for Jerry Stackhouse and his team. Obviously, the season's probably not over. Vandy will probably get its NIT assignment in a few days, but just a really brutal way to end things. In terms of Vanderbilt's postseason hope, it felt like this could have been the biggest day in Vanderbilt's program in recent memory, probably since Darius Garland committed to this program, maybe since some of Vandy's bigger wins, obviously some big wins this year, but none of them would have come close to what the NCAA tournament could have done for this team, could have brought tremendous momentum not only on the floor, not only in terms of what Vanderbilt could do this week, but in terms of just the momentum that this program would have in recruiting, in terms of marketing, and in terms of what it could put on the floor next season and the belief in Jerry Stackhouse. Now, you don't have that perception, and Vanderbilt's going to end another year without hitting its goal and with just another stretch of good momentum to end the year. And it's a really tough finish for a program that was in a really similar spot last year, and this one probably more heartbreaking than last year. Last year probably didn't have the resume to be in the tournament. This year had a resume that I guess the committee didn't see as one that was fitting to the tournament, or even as close as maybe a lot of people thought. Vanderbilt was not even in the first four out on the CBS selection show. I thought Vanderbilt would have been in the top 2 or 3 out. I wasn't one that thought Vanderbilt would get in today, but thought Vanderbilt would at least be more in striking range than it was. And it seems like even if it had beat Texas A&M, it probably wouldn't have been in the tournament. Just shows you kind of where the NCAA stands and where the committee stands. I think we learned a lot by how they evaluated Vanderbilt. The net obviously hindered Vanderbilt, and I think the metrics were probably the biggest thing. Early in the year, Vanderbilt really tanked the metrics, were outside of the top 100 and really had a tough time getting back within striking range. Rutgers was 80th in the net last year and got in with 7 quad 1 wins. Vanderbilt was 81st, maybe had a little bit comparable resume to Rutgers, so you kind of thought maybe the committee's putting less of an emphasis on net, and maybe it tries to prove that by putting Vanderbilt in the tournament, and it tries to prove that conference tournament results matter a little more than they have in the past by putting Vanderbilt in. But Vanderbilt really wasn't even within striking range after its loss to Texas A&M. Maybe it was before. Now North Carolina's above it, Clemson's above it, Mississippi State's above it. Just really tough for Vanderbilt to see kind of their season maybe not end that way, because there's going to be more games and more chances for them to find that magic again, but that magical stretch in terms of the last 10 to 12 where you're aiming for an NCAA tournament berth, now that can't happen, and really heartbreaking for Vanderbilt. The two things really stand out as to why this kind of went the way it did. One is the metrics. Vanderbilt was 80th in the net, like I mentioned. It was really just kind of a pipe dream that the committee wouldn't hold that against him as much as maybe we thought it would, and that obviously proved to not be the case. Vanderbilt was really hurt by that. Would have been the lowest team in the net to ever get in the tournament. And you can't rely on that. The computer numbers are the computer numbers, and maybe in future years the committee will make a change to that formula, I'm sure. With the way Vanderbilt was evaluated by the committee, maybe they'll receive a lot of backlash from the fan base and from other people around the media. It felt like a lot of national media members were kind of getting on Vanderbilt's train today, and felt like Vanderbilt maybe had a shot towards the afternoon. Heading into the morning, I had thought, man, there's no way they're getting in tonight. It felt like Vanderbilt itself didn't really expect to get in, and then as the afternoon went on, you see all this positive buzz about Vanderbilt. Maybe you're starting to think, hey, maybe the committee evaluates them in a way we hadn't thought before. See all these theories about maybe they want to prove that conference tournament record matters. They want to prove that playing well at the end of the year matters. They want to prove that they don't want to put as much of an emphasis on the net. They want to so that they can evaluate in other ways. And it didn't today. And Vanderbilt really was hurt by that. And its KenPom rating, which was 80 as well, would have been the lowest net ranking, really, I think, in the net era to get in the NCAA tournament. So obviously the metrics were the main thing for Vanderbilt. And I think that will certainly spark some conversations as to how much the committee uses the net, but right now that's how they evaluate these teams. And I don't know if that's anti-Vanderbilt bias. I think it's just kind of how the cookie crumbled for Vanderbilt, and the reason it was so low in the net is because of what it did in non-conference play. Vanderbilt, I asked Jerry Stackhouse about this after NC State. Vanderbilt was, 6-6 at the end of non-conference play before Southeastern Louisiana beat Southeastern Louisiana, moved to 7-6. But at the end of non-conference play, Vanderbilt had lost to Southern Miss, which ultimately became a quad 3 loss. That's something that hurt them as well. Maybe the committee could have looked past that at some point and thought, well, they only have one quad 3 loss, only have one really bad loss with Grambling State, which was always a quad 4 loss. Vanderbilt, Jerry Stackhouse said a few weeks ago, those teams were better than us at that time. Now they're not. Now we're playing our best basketball. And I think the committee maybe didn't take his word on that and held those losses against them. And that's how it should be. The whole body of work should be evaluated. That's why the NCAA got rid of the last 10 rule a few years ago in terms of evaluating teams. Vanderbilt would have been in if that was the case. And I know that certainly hurts, but the whole body of work was evaluated for Vanderbilt, and non-conference play hurt it tremendously. Pitt was really its only good win in non-conference play. It had lost to NC State, lost to Grambling State, and lost to Southern Miss. NC State was one of its big opportunities, one of its last opportunities in non-conference play to get anything on its resume. And I think that's got to be the key next year for Vanderbilt, just more sense of urgency in the non-conference. You have to go get a quad 1 win or another quad 2 win. Vanderbilt left non-conference play with one quad 2 win, which was Pitt. We're 0-4 in quad 1, and I think Pitt was actually a quad 3 at that time. Moved up to quad 2, but just a really, really tough way to go out for Vanderbilt. And I think it can point back to non-conference play as to why that happened. I think we were right to give Jerry Stackhouse a lot of that flack early in the year. We were also right to credit him late in the year. This doesn't change that. This doesn't change the magical run that team had. But also it kind of puts an emphasis on, hey, those games in November and December really matter. I don't know if he was serious when he said the preseason. I'm not going to delve into breaking down his comment there, but it's clear a sense of urgency is needed, and it worked. His strategy worked in terms of getting them to play their best basketball late, but got to find ways to win earlier in the year, and I think that's the big thing for this program. It's played its best basketball down the stretch really every single season of Jerry Stackhouse's tenure. Early in the non-conference slate, though, it's really been hurt. Last year wasn't even in striking range because of what happened in non-conference play. This year, despite probably the best run of Jerry Stackhouse's tenure, couldn't get in the tournament, and probably the best run out of any SEC team besides when Alabama started, 12-0. Feels like that was one of the best runs in the SEC this year. It was Jerry Stackhouse's best of his career. Vanderbilt still couldn't find a way into the tournament and still couldn't change that national perception of them being, middle to bottom of the league. Vanderbilt had a chance to change that in the last few weeks and ultimately fell short. I don't know how big that loss at Texas A&M was yesterday. Well, I guess not at Texas A&M, at Bridgestone to Texas A&M was, but it feels like that is another one that maybe could have moved the needle, but I think Vanderbilt might have been a little bit farther out than we had anticipated. I thought Vanderbilt was right in striking range after Kentucky. I wasn't sold that A&M would be a game that put them over the top, but it certainly was a chance for them to move the needle. The optimism that we felt yesterday morning as it was going into that game with Texas A&M was the last team playing. I think felt maybe not premature because I think Vanderbilt was in striking range. Maybe it got dropped because of Texas A&M and the margin it lost by. But it just feels like Vanderbilt it had too much going against it at this point in the season, despite all the runs, despite the magic it possessed to get in the tournament. The net was too much. That's too heavily relied upon on the committee for it to be as low as it was for Vanderbilt. And Ken Palm is also something that really hurts. The predictive metrics hurt it despite the strength of schedule. Despite their 5 quad 1 wins, Vanderbilt had 11 quad 1 losses, which I'm sure didn't help. The win percentage was a little bit lower than maybe we had anticipated. They were 5-9 at one point, now 5-11, and things just didn't break Vanderbilt's way in terms of the last few weeks of the season. Southern Miss had a rough week to end the year and ended in quad 3. If that was a quad 2 loss, maybe we're looking at something different. If Vanderbilt had won in Baton Rouge, maybe we're looking at something different. If Vanderbilt had beaten Grambling State during finals week, we are looking at a lot different of a resume. And Vanderbilt didn't really have that one thing besides strength of schedule and besides that stretch to hang its hat on last year. Remember, Notre Dame was on the bubble. What it had to hang its hat on was won a lot of regular season games, maybe not in the upper 2 quads, but it avoided the bad loss for the entire season, and maybe it didn't have the huge wins, but it did have that going for it. And Vanderbilt didn't quite have the quad 3 and quad 4 profile to make the NCAA tournament, and that ultimately cost them as well. Just the metrics were the thing that hurt Vanderbilt. Non-conference play was the thing that hurt Vanderbilt, and just failing to win the SEC tournament, I guess, really caught up with them. Vanderbilt did everything it could at the end of that stretch to get itself in the NCAA tournament, ultimately fall short, and ultimately it has another quiet selection Sunday full of disappointment on a day that could have been the biggest for the program in years. Just really sad way to go out for this Vanderbilt team that possessed magic for a while. Now it'll probably go to the NIT this week. And moving forward for this program, goal has to be the NCAA tournament next year again. Jerry Stackhouse said in the preseason that we want to get to the NCAA tournament, we want to win a few games, and that was their goal. We're not letting them off the hook now for not achieving that goal, even if they had that magical stretch. The whole body of work wasn't good enough to get in the tournament, and I guess the magical stretch is easy to look at, but ultimately you have to take the whole body of work into account. And Vanderbilt didn't have what it considered to be a successful year this year. I would consider stretches of this year successful. I think there's a lot of positive momentum heading into next year, but at some point positive momentum can't be enough. At some point there can't be an excuse. There can't be we had this going for us. Vanderbilt's got to make the tournament next year, and I think there was a lot shown this year that allowed Vanderbilt to feel good about the way the season ended. And I don't say to feel horrible about the way this year ended, but Vanderbilt set expectations for itself in the preseason. Jerry Stackhouse said that publicly, and it didn't hit him. So we can't consider this a complete success, but it was certainly a fun year for this program. One that reignited the city of Nashville around this program, and one where Vanderbilt has to feel at least some sort of positive momentum with the way its guards have played recently and the way it's found ways to win games in multiple ways. Just a really tough way to end for this team that certainly felt like it could have won a game or two in the tournament. I think this team had 100% belief that if it went to Dayton, it would have got out of Dayton and it would have won a game in the NCAA tournament. And you have to feel heartbroken for those guys, just that they didn't get that opportunity, because it felt like they could play with anybody right now, except maybe Alabama. But just a really tough way for this thing to end as Vanderbilt falls short of its goal for the 6th straight season, and Jerry Stackhouse remains without his first NCAA tournament appearance. I don't know if I'd say yet that it's NCAA tournament or bust for this team next year, but it has to be the expectation, that there can't be excuses for that. So I appreciate you guys watching. We'll be back with some NIT content. Maybe Chris and I will do something in the morning to reflect on the season so far and what it has going from here. But to finish this year, Vanderbilt, I'm sure, would love to get some positive momentum in the NIT. We'll see how much they can get up for those games, and that'll really tell us a lot. But I think we know enough about this culture and we know enough about this program to know that they'll probably get up for these games. So I appreciate you guys watching. See you in a few days. Maybe tomorrow I'll come on and break out an NIT matchup. If we get it, I need to pay a little more attention to when that comes out. I was mostly focused on this, but we'll have some NIT coverage for you later this week. I appreciate everybody watching and supporting. This is not as cool as the Bridgestone Arena videos, but it was a tremendous week, and ultimately Vanderbilt fell short though. So God bless. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.